Greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to my movie vlog. My name, of course, is John Campea. I am your host today on this special. It's a Thanksgiving Day here in the United States of America. I'm still not used to that because to me, Thanksgiving is still in October because, you know, Canadian and all. So that's when Thanksgiving is to me. But happy Thanksgiving to all you guys who are my American friends. And Coco is now in theaters everywhere. And I had a whole bunch of people writing to me, including on my live show, asking me, John, since Coco's coming out, time to do a top 10 best Pixar films. I gotta tell you, I was thinking about that last night, and I put this out on Twitter that coming up with a top 10 favorite Pixar list is obscenely difficult because they are all just masterful. It seems like, there's, with a few exceptions, it feels like every single Pixar film is absolutely masterful. And certainly the top 10, I'm sure my top 10 list is going to look a lot different than your top 10 lists. And I'm sure you're going to be able to take those films that I put in there and rearrange them any way you want. But I'm here to give you my thoughts. Now, here's what I'm going to do. Once I get through my top 10 list, I want to get your guys' opinions. So for those of you guys who are watching live right now, I'm going to have you tweet into me simply at John Campea so I can get your live thoughts and opinions. What would be your top 5? What would you put in the number 1 spot? What film was left off my list that you would put on the list? I'm going to hear all that stuff from you guys, and we'll get to that in just a couple of minutes. But for now, let's get started with our top 10. Remember, all film is subjective, and so is this list, but here's my thoughts on Pixar. The number 10 film for Pixar, to me, is Inside Out. I remember when I first saw the first kind of like little teasers for this and the first little clips that they showed for Inside Out, I remember laughing my guts off, thinking it was such an incredibly original idea, taking these creatures that are actually represent our emotions and how they work inside a young girl. And it was just brilliant. It's funny. It's insightful. It's great social commentary at the same time. Inside Out. It's hard to believe how much I love this film, and it's number 10 on my list. But whatever. Number 10 for me is Inside Out. Number 9 is one that could easily be a number 1 film, which is WALL-E. How can you make a movie this engaging, this personable, with this much emotion, and basically, especially for the first like 3/4 of the film, there's practically no dialogue whatsoever, as you have these two robots that barely utter the English language, and yet it is one of the most human, one of the most emotionally satisfying films that they have ever put out. WALL-E for me comes in at number 9. At number 8, another film that I'm sure a lot of people are going to put at their number 1 spot, and that's Finding Nemo. Finding Nemo, of course, was such a special film, not just because of the way they portrayed a bond between a father and a son, and of course the great Dory character and the great humor. The film has great heart. One of the reasons why a sequel came out, a sequel which, by the way, is not even on my top 10 list, Finding Dory, and that's a great movie in and of itself. But you could put out a sequel to that movie so many years later, and yet it still resonates with so many people on that level. So, for me, 10, 9, number 8 is Finding Nemo. Number 7 for me, again, another film that a lot of people will put at number 1, the first Monsters, Inc. And you know what? It's funny because I remember liking Monsters, Inc. the first time I watched it. And then a couple of years passed, and then I started watching it again. It's like every time I watched it, I realized how smart this movie is, just how original the whole concept is as well. Monsters under our beds are reals, and there's this whole industry behind it all. It was so cute and original. And of course, you had great voice work by John Goodman and Billy Crystal, really bringing these characters to life. And of course, Boo. Boo, who we all just fell in love with and adored. So for those reasons and many others, Monsters, Inc. comes in at my number 10, 9, 8, number 7 spot. All right, now we move on to number 6. Number 6 for me, one of the Toy Story films, Toy Story 2. I remember thinking, why do a sequel to Toy Story? What more is there to do? And you can't possibly be as good as the original Toy Story. And yet Toy Story 2 came out, did one of the very rare things that we ever see happen in Hollywood, which is a sequel being better than its original. Again, as becomes a Pixar hallmark. And we're going to be talking a lot about this and using these phrases a lot with all these movies. Movies with great character, movies with great heart, movies with great humor, all wrapped into one. And I remember this was really one of the first Pixar movies that, to me, drove it home that Pixar does not make kids' movies. Pixar makes kid-friendly movies that are also equally as targeted as adults, and you really see that come out with a movie like Toy Story. So that's number 6. All right. Whew! Moving on now to number 5. Now we're in the top 5. And the number 5 film for me that Pixar's ever done is the brand new one, and that's Coco. Coco is a film that I will admit right up front, I had my doubts about. I did have some doubts about Coco. I still have some doubts about how well it can do at the box office. But any doubts about the quality of this movie, how beautiful the movie is, how emotionally satisfying the movie is, how fun the movie is, all wrapped into one, those doubts are gone. Coco is a triumph. It's a beautiful film. It's wonderful. If you haven't seen it already, you need to rush out there to see it. I mean, what can I say? Pixar does it again. Pixar does it again. Coco is a triumph. So make sure you go see that. Coco comes in at number 5. All right, now we go to number 4. Another film that I'm sure a lot of you guys have in your number 1 spot. My number 4 all-time Pixar film epitomizes that idea that Pixar does not make kid films. They make kid-friendly films that in many ways are targeted at adults, and that's The Incredibles. This film really drives that thing home. Because when you really look at the themes of The Incredibles, yeah, it's colorful and kids will like it. But it's about this man in his latter middle age, reflecting on the days of glory, wondering about the things he missed out on, but then ultimately coming to realize that the things he has now in his family, in his marriage, with his kids, is the most important thing he's ever had, and that he falls in love with that all over again. These are not kid themes, but it is kid-friendly. The Incredibles is amazing. It was my favorite Pixar film for a while, and it's been too long. We are finally getting a sequel coming, so Incredibles comes into my number 4 spot. In my number 3 spot of the best Pixar films of all time, a film that I think I appreciate more than a lot of other people, but for whatever reasons, Ratatouille struck all the right chords for me. Whether it's the relationship between Remy and his father, whether or not it's a movie about chasing your dreams, whether or not it's about the little things that can become the big things and make dreams possible. There's so much special stuff. And of course, Patton Oswalt, introduced to us really for the most part. A lot of people who know comedy probably already knew who he was, but a lot of people had no idea who Patton Oswalt was. And then along comes Ratatouille, and he does the voice of Remy, blowing the doors off. It's such a special movie. Make sure you check out Ratatouille if you have not. All right, now we get to our top 2. My number 2 best Pixar film is Toy Story 3, which is practically a perfect movie. Toy Story 3, again, was, wait a minute, I remember when they announced Toy Story 3, and a lot of people, oh, come on, Toy Story's good enough, you're going to run it into the ground, let it go. And then they put out what I contend is the best Toy Story film they ever put out. A film which was rightfully nominated, not just for Best Animated Picture. Toy Story 3 was nominated for Best Picture at the Academy Awards. And you want to talk about emotion? Let me bring that up again. The scene where Andy is giving his toys away to the little kid, and he's describing why each toy is incredibly special to him. Come on. Not a dry eye in the entire house, including, also don't forget that thing when they were all facing their doom. They're about to go down into the garbage incinerator, and they grab hands each other. Come on. This movie is practically a perfect movie. Love this thing. Toy Story 3 is number 2 on my list, which brings us to a film that I think a lot of you guys will agree is the number 1. It is for me, absolutely. And that's Up. I mean, come on. The first 4 minutes of Up alone could have won Best Picture at the Oscars. As practically without any dialogue, they follow the story of this couple from childhood to adulthood to senior citizens, and then him losing his wife. And oh my God, there's waterworks everywhere on that thing. But then it just picks up from there, with this guy rediscovering his love of life again through this little kid and the adventure that they go on. The movie is spectacular on every single level. I absolutely adore Up. Up, to me, is really, it kind of represents all the possibilities that exist within the medium of animation. The types of stories you can tell just with animation. There's something so intrinsically beautiful about this film that for me, it is my number 1 Pixar film ever made. All right, running down again and again, you could take these 10 films, toss them around in a bowl, and put them in almost any order, and you wouldn't be wrong. But the order I'm doing today: number 10, Inside Out. Number 9, WALL-E. Number 8, Finding Nemo. Number 7, Monsters, Inc. Number 6, Toy Story Part 2. Number 5, the brand new film Coco. Number 4, The Incredibles. Number 3, Ratatouille. Number 2, Toy Story 3. And it was tough not putting that one at number 1, I got to admit. But coming in number 1 for me is Up. So I want to know, What do you guys make of that list? I mean, look, films like this is how good Pixar is. Movies like Finding Dory is not on this list. Movies like Brave, which won the Academy Award for Best Animated Film, not on this list. The original Toy Story, I don't have on this list. That's how good Pixar is. That's why I've said about Pixar for the longest time. They're not just the best animation studio in the business. They may be the best filmmaking studio in the business, animation or otherwise. I mean, they just put out these masterful films over and over again. And again, I mean, just think again about that scene with Andy giving the toys away. Come on, tell me that's not one of the all-time great moments in cinematic history. Come on. Anyway. All right. Now, I want to know, what about you guys? What are some things? Are there films that I didn't put on my list that maybe you thought should be on the list? Would you rearrange these somehow? I want to hear what you guys have to say. Tweet to me right now at John Campea. Just send out a tweet. Make sure you start off your tweet with at John Campea, and then we will take it from there. And we are going to start now with the first live tweet from you guys. And the first live tweet comes to us from Crazy Davy, who writes, John, Toy Story 3 is the greatest Pixar of all time. The Good Dinosaur is the worst. Even worse than Cars 2. I'm going to disagree with you about The Good Dinosaur. I actually thought The Good Dinosaur was pretty charming. I enjoyed it. I still put Cars 2 probably as the weakest one they've ever done. I actually enjoyed The Good Dinosaur, but I can see it is, obviously I didn't put it on my top 10 list, so I don't think it's like all that fantastic, but I thought there was some charm to it. Let's see. Let's try this one. Okay, this one comes to us from Zurabek13, writes, John, Wall-E and Up is up there with The Lion King for me. Absolutely spectacular. And yeah, Lion King to me is actually my all-time number one favorite animated film, period. But you're right, when you're talking about movies like Up and you're talking about movies like Wall-E, and like I have Wall-E in my number 9 spot, it could easily be in the number 3 spot. I mean, that's just how good these Pixar films are. But I agree with you. They rank right up there. They belong in the discussion with movies like The Lion King. I absolutely agree with you about that. Let's see. Let's go to this next one. This next one comes to us from the Geeky Taco. And the Geeky Taco writes into us, my top 5 are 5, Inside Out, 4, Bugs Life. Bugs Life, that's another one I didn't have on my list. That is how good Pixar is. Anyway, number 4, Bugs Life. Number 3, The Incredibles. Number 2, Toy Story 1. And number 1, Toy Story 3. Again, I can't argue with that. I mean, that's just how good Pixar. I can't even argue with your list. I mean, that's such a great list. Let's see. This next one comes to us from Spider-Man2, who writes, John, he says, a movie that makes you think, enjoy, and most importantly feel is a true masterpiece. Inside Out is number 1. You ain't wrong about that. It is a movie that makes you think. It is a movie that makes you feel. It's a movie that you enjoy. It ticks off all those boxes. It's such a great film. And that scene near the end, where Riley's now sitting with her parents and like letting it all out, letting that sadness out about the fact that they moved away from her friends, from everything that she's known, from everything that she's loved other than her mom and dad, and finally letting that pain and that sadness out. What a special moment in a film. I mean, seriously, like it's Pixar that just seems to be able to crank these out. Every single movie they do, they find a way to top themselves with all these things. All right, next one comes to us from Real Canistro, who writes, John, Toy Story 1 should be on the list in my opinion. Hey, and I'm sure you are not alone. It boggles my mind. When I put together my top 10 list, it boggles my mind that I went, oh my God, the original Toy Story is not on my list. And yet I couldn't find a film to bump out for it to be in there. Again, it just kind of boggles the mind. Let's see, for me, Detlix106 again writes, John, you not love Toy Story 1? Of course I love Toy Story 1. I absolutely love Toy Story 1. But there was only 10 spots on my list, man, and I just couldn't see for my list, I couldn't see a film that I would bump out for Toy Story 1. But that's just how good and how tough this has been for me to put together these lists. All right, this next one comes to us from B-Cuss I Am Batman, who writes, John, Ratatouille is undervalued as far as Pixar movies go. That's my absolute favorite. The critic speech at the end is amazing. Yeah. And I can't even remember the name of the critic at the end of it. It's a great name for a critic too, but there's so much good stuff in that movie. Like it works on so many different levels and so many different layers. It defies, as many Pixar films do, the whole notion of what a cartoon is. It's way beyond that. and Ratatouille. And it's funny because I still talk to some people today who, amongst all the Pixar films, Ratatouille is the one that a lot of people haven't gotten around to. If you have not watched Ratatouille this holiday weekend, take some time, sit down and watch it. You will thank me. Believe me, you will thank me that you did. Okay, I'm just going to take a couple more here, guys. This one comes to us from Podaka79 writes, The Incredibles is what Fantastic Four should look like. It's funny because a lot of people, that's a running joke in a lot of the circles that I'm in, is that The Incredibles, the best Fantastic Four movie ever made, and that's probably two. This one comes to us from A.N. Callaghan, who writes, John, I'm a huge fan of The Iron Giant. Your thoughts? Well, yeah, I mean, everybody's a big fan of The Iron Giant. It's just that Iron Giant is not a Pixar film, so it's not really relevant to this discussion. But of course I love The Iron Giant. Everybody loves The Iron Giant. Come on. Let's see. This one comes from RockFan180, writes, John, the way they explained Dory's memory problem in Finding Dory had me almost tearing up. Just really heartwarming and effective. And you know what? Heartwarming, effective, emotionally satisfying, clever. These are all terms that you can practically apply to just about, not certainly not all, Cars 2, Cars 3, I'm looking at you specifically, but to just about every Pixar movie. How they find a way to accomplish these things and reach these milestones and reach these goals almost every single time they come out of the gate is absolutely astounding to me, and the quality that they're able to do this kind of stuff in. Anyway, guys, I know a lot of you have a lot of thoughts. I'm seeing the live stream chat board flying by as well. But that will do it for me, guys, for this little installment of my special video here on my movie vlog, the top 10 Pixar films according to me. But the best thing is, all film is subjective, which means your top 10 list is going to look different than mine, and mine is no more valid than yours is. Let's talk about some movies. So do me a favor, guys, click the thumbs up button, jump into the comments section, leave your thoughts on my list. What films did I leave off that should have been in there? How would your top 10 list look? I want to know what your list would look like. That will do it for me, guys. Thanks so much for joining me. My name's John Campea. Have a great Thanksgiving weekend, guys. Until the next video, bye-bye.